Hello friends, this will be tutorial number 69 in this C++ programming course. In this tutorial we'll talk about operator overloading and the friend functions. And let's create a new project console application. We will call it overload project. Here is our main, and now we will create a class, a rectangle. Let's create class quickly. New class, rectangle, without destructor. And let's include IOStream and standard namespace into rectangle CPP file. And we will include namespace standard in the header file. And let's define members. We will have two private members. It will be sides of the rectangle. It will be float, and the name of the side will be x and y. Now let's create parameterized constructor with two members. It will be float x and float y, and we will create get functions for these two sides. Float get x and float get y. We will also create area function. We want to calculate the area of the rectangle. And now we will create a rectangle function, but it will be friend function. Let's create a friend function. I will explain later. We want to create a rectangle, and the name of the function will be operator plus. And this function will return a rectangle, and it will have two rectangles as a parameter. And we will use, let's write two rectangles, but we need to use a reference. The name of the rectangle will be R1, and we need another rectangle. Another rectangle will be R2, and this will be a friend function. And I will use just copy and I will paste it once more. We will have one more function, but instead of operator, it is a function that will return a rectangle, but instead of operator plus, we will have operator minus. And that will be okay. And now we need to go to the CPP file to define this constructor and the functions. Let's define constructor. It has float x and float y as the parameters, and we'll write this x will be equals to x, and this y will be equals to y. Now let's define get functions for both sides. Rectangle get x, it will return and float let's define get epsilon function. It will return epsilon, and let's define the area. It will return, we need to calculate area of the rectangle, it will return x multiplied with epsilon, multiplication of both sides. And that will be all. This in the CPP file we will not define. This friend function will be accessible in our main file. And this other function and constructor, as always, we define it in our CPP file. Now I will just build and run to see if we have some error. We didn't write this keyword properly. Now let's build and run again. Okay, and it works fine. Now let's go to our main file. We need to include rectangle class. We will delete this hello world message, we don't need it anymore. And we will create two float variables. It will be float, we can call it side x and side epsilon. And we can create one simple void function to create a sides of the rectangle. It will be void function create sides, and it will have two floats as the parameters. It will have float x with reference and float epsilon. And let's write a message cout enter side x we will input x, and we will do the same thing for the side epsilon, enter side epsilon, and we will input epsilon. We created our function which will create a sides of the rectangle. Now what can we do? We can create one rectangle, but first we will write a message. It will be rectangle A, for example. We will write a message rectangle A and let's call create sides function, create sides, and we will use our two global variables, side x and side epsilon, which will be the sides of the rectangle, side x and side epsilon. Now when we have both sides, we can create a rectangle. Rectangle, we will call A, will be new rectangle, and we will use side x and side epsilon. Now our rectangle is created, And we can also create another rectangle B. Rectangle B. We can use /n here. And we will call a create sides function again. Create sides. And let's use side x and side y. It will be the sides of our new rectangle. And let's create it a rectangle. B will be equals to new rectangle, and we will use side x and side y. Now we have created two rectangles, but we need some void function which will show us the both sides and area of the rectangle. It is better to create one function. We will create void display function, which will have a rectangle with pointer as a parameter. It will be a rectangle R. And now we can display some message. First we will write side x equals, and we will write rectangle R, and we will use get x function. And line. Now let's write side y equals, let's write rectangle R. Now we will use get y function and line, and also we will display the area. Area equals, let's write R, and let's use area function. That will be all. Now we can use these two rectangles and display their characteristics. Now let's go here. We have created two rectangles. Now first we can write a message /n rectangle A and let's call the display function, and we will use, it is a function with a pointer. Now we can just write A. And we can do the same thing for the rectangle B. Rectangle B and let's call display function again to display the sides and area for the rectangle B. And now before run we can delete these both rectangles from the memory. And we can try to run this application. Let's build and run. as you can see, we have rectangle A, and we need to enter the sides. Side X will be, for example, 6, and side Y will be 8. And we have a rectangle B. Side X will be 5 and side Y will be 4. As you can see, we have a rectangle A, side X is 6, side Y is 8, and area is 48, which works properly, and we have a rectangle B. Side X is 5, side Y is 4, and area is 20, which works perfectly. But now we will use operator plus and minus. This we have created these two friendly functions. These friendly functions we will use to create a new rectangle, and by using two, and we have two rectangles as a parameter. From these two rectangles we will create a new one. But what means operator plus and what means operator minus? Of course we can have operator multiplication, division, but now we will use just plus and minus. Let's create in the main. This is a friend function. Friend function, it means that it can be accessed in the main class. We will create a function which will be a friend with this function from the class rectangle. Now let's create a function. It will be a rectangle function. It will be operator plus, and the same thing, it will have two rectangles as a parameters. We need to use a reference. It will be R1 and another rectangle will be R number 2. And inside this function, first we will create two local variables, two local float variables. We can create X and Y. And now let's define X. X will be equals. This is operator plus function, and it means we will use. We can define it. We can show how we can define it, but it's a logic to we have addition. And X we will use R1. We will get X function from the rectangle R1, and we can do addition with side X from rectangle 2, and we will define this variable X as an addition of a side X of rectangle 1 and rectangle 2. And we can do the same for the Y. Will be equals to R1 dot get Y, and we can also use addition here. Okay, Y will be addition of side Y of both rectangle. And now we can create a rectangle. It will be a local variable, a rectangle, without pointer. We will not allocate him in the memory. R3, and we will use X and Y. Of course, class rectangle has a constructor from two float elements. we will use this x and y, and we will just return this R3 rectangle. And this is our operator plus function. This is how new rectangle will be made. And let's define also, we have also operator minus function. Let's create operator minus, which is also a friendly function. It has two rectangles as a parameter. We need to use a reference R1, and also we will need a rectangle R2. Also it will have a reference. And now let's we will also create two local variables, float variables x and y, and now we can define x. But we don't need strictly to now we don't need to do the same thing. For example, we can define x. For example, it will be we will use R2 side x of this rectangle number 2, and we will define x. The sides will be the same. And now let's define y. For the side y, we can use subtraction. It is normal when we have operator minus. It is logical to we have some subtraction here. And what we will gonna do, let's use the y for the first rectangle, get y minus R2 dot get y. Of course we could do vice versa, it's our choice. And we have defined y, but before we create a rectangle, okay, it depends. We need to do subtraction of the side y of both rectangle. But in case we don't want to have negative numbers, if for example side y of the rectangle number 2 is greater from the side y of the rectangle number 1, we want to use absolute value. We can resolve it with if-else statement, and we also can use absolute value. I will use absolute value here to prevent negative number. I don't want negative number here. And now I will just write y equals, I will use absolute value of y, which will be good. And now I can, and I will create a new rectangle, a rectangle R3, and I will use x and y as a parameter, and I will return this R3 because this function needs to return rectangle. Okay, and these two functions, friendly functions, will be used to create a new rectangle from the existing two rectangles. We already have two rectangles. And now let's use it, but before delete them, we will use them again. We want to create a new rectangle. Just a second, a rectangle, it will be rectangle C. And how we will how we will call this function? It will be really easy. This is operator, friendly operator plus function. We will not call it in the standard way. It is easy, very easy way to call. We want to use, we have rectangle A in the main, rectangle A and the rectangle B with pointer, and we just need to use, we will just call, we want to use operator plus function, and we will just do this. It will be equals A plus B. In this way, this is operator overload. With this way, we are calling and we are using this this operator plus function, and this will give us. We will use this operator plus a function to create a rectangle C, which is perfect. And also we will create rectangle D, and for rectangle D we will use operator minus function, and it will be the same. It will be A, we need two rectangles, and it will be A minus B. We need to use a pointer here because we have creating these two rectangles with pointers, and we have created two more rectangles. Now we can display their characteristics to see if it will work properly. /n, and let's write rectangle C and line, and we will let's call the display function. Let's use rectangle C, but this rectangle, this is a function with a pointer. For the rectangle with pointer, we don't have pointer here. This means that we need to use a reference, and we will do the same thing for the rectangle D. And we will call the display function of the rectangle D. This should work properly. Now let's build and run to see. Just a moment, we have an error. Yes, it's a syntax error. It is rectangle. Okay, again, let's go to let's create rectangle A. Side X will be 6, side Y will be 7, and here let's create rectangle B. Side X will be 8 and side Y will be 3, for example. And let's check this, what we have here. We have rectangle A and rectangle B. As you can see, side X is 6, side Y is 7, area is 42, and we have rectangle B. Side X is 8, side Y is 3, the area is 24. It works properly. But we have rectangle C, and we have here side X. This is the rectangle. just a second. We have creating this rectangle using operator plus function. Let's move here to operator plus function, and we define x. X will be addition of the side x of first rectangle and side x from the second rectangle, and the same thing for the y. Let's go back. Okay, side x of rectangle A is 6, and here is of the rectangle B is 8. 6 plus 8 is 14. Okay, as you can see, side x is 14. And we have addition of the side y of both rectangles. 7 plus 3 will give us 10, which is great. And we have side x is 14, side y is 10, and area is 140, which works perfectly fine. And now we have a rectangle D. Let's go back here. It is operator minus from the rectangle A and the rectangle B, which is okay. And now let's go to the definition operator plus. We define x to be the same as the side x of the second rectangle, which is rectangle B. Here x is 8, and here also x is 8, which is perfectly fine. And just a second, y will be subtraction of the side y of the first rectangle and side y of the second rectangle, and vice versa, but it will be absolute value. We cannot have negative number. For example, if the result is -3, the result will be 3. And now let's go back to C. As you can see, side y is 7, and here side y is 3, and the subtraction will give us the 4, which is okay. X is 8, and y is 4, and the area is 32. Maybe it looks a little bit complicated, but trust me, it's pretty much easy. We can try to run again. Okay, these are floats, but I'm not using real numbers here for you understand better. Now let's try again. Side x is 10, and side y will be 5. And here side x will be 8, and y will be 9. And okay, we have rectangle A and B and their areas, which works perfectly fine. Rectangle C, it is addition, side x is addition of side x of both rectangles. 10 plus 8 is 18, which is okay, and addition of two y sides. 5 plus 9 will give us 14. We have an area, which is perfectly fine. Rectangle D, side x should be the same as the side x of the rectangle B, 8 and 8, which is okay. And we have addition of side y here. 5 minus 9 is -4, but we have absolute value. We already told that we don't want negative numbers, and the absolute value of -4 will be the 4. 8 and 4, and area will be 32. Of course, the same thing, we can use multiplication, and we can use operation. We can divide, whatever you want. I just wanted to show you with plus and minus, but you can use multiplication and division too. Just wanted to explain you this with not too much complicated example, and I really hope that you understand it. If you like this tutorial, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on Instagram. You have a link in the description. And see you in the next tutorial.